She vanished after work, the cold case that unmasked a traveling serial killer. It starts the way the worst stories often start, quietly, with small details that feel off before they feel terrifying. It's late, it's cold, and the Uinta Garden Shopping Center is winding down for the night. Most of the stores have already locked up. The parking lot is thinning out, and that normal end-of-shift rhythm is setting in. At the pharmacy, the manager and a cashier are finishing up, making sure the registers are balanced and the doors are secured. And then they notice something that doesn't fit the pattern of an ordinary night. A car sitting there with the lights on and the engine running. Not parked like someone is popping in for one last errand, but abandoned in that unsettling way that makes your instincts whisper, "This is wrong." They recognize the car as Cynthia McLaughlin's. Cynthia works the cosmetic counter. She should be gone already. They know she checked out about 45 minutes earlier. If she left, why is her car still running? Why are the lights still on? And why is the windshield partially scraped, as if she started to clear the ice and then suddenly stopped mid-task? When people leave a car running in winter, it's usually because they're stepping away for a few seconds, warming it up, grabbing something, coming right back. But Cynthia doesn't come back. They call her name, no answer. They look around, nothing. And in the first minutes of a disappearance, that emptiness feels like a hallway with all the lights turned off. Cynthia is 22 years old. She's a young mother. She has a little girl named Stacy, and according to everyone close to her, that relationship is inseparable. Cynthia does what she does for her daughter. That's not a poetic line. It's a practical reality. She works hard. Money is tight. She's been living with her mother, trying to keep life stable, trying to do everything right. So when she doesn't come home, the family doesn't treat it like a late night or a spontaneous decision. They treat it like an emergency. The detectives who respond move quickly because missing adults are tricky. Most missing adults are found alive, and the usual assumption is that they've left on their own. But Cynthia isn't just an adult. She's a mother. And she vanished from a parking lot in winter with her car left running. That's not the profile of someone who calmly chose to disappear. That's the profile of interruption. At first, investigators do what investigators must do. They build the last known timeline. They speak with Cynthia's mother. They learn Cynthia and Stacy recently moved in because finances were strained. Cynthia works 2 jobs, and her mother helps with childcare. Her mother is distraught, and Stacy keeps asking where her mom is. The detectives know that in the early hours and days, the most likely culprit is usually not a stranger in the dark. It's often someone in the victim's life, an ex, a boyfriend, someone who feels rejected, someone who wants control. So they ask the hard questions, who might want to harm her? They start with the obvious, Stacy's father, Cynthia's ex-husband, but he's in Arizona, and he provides an alibi. That lead fades. Then there's a more immediate name, Dave Winfield, an ex-boyfriend. Cynthia ended the relationship recently. According to her friend and mother, Dave was heartbroken. Detectives dig in. They learn Dave had been quietly spending time at a particular lounge, a place that at that time carried major social consequences. In the early 1980s, being connected to a gay bar could threaten careers, reputations, and in military circles, even employment. Detectives consider whether Cynthia could have discovered something Dave wanted hidden. But when they confront him, his reaction is more startled at being found out than evasive about the disappearance. His alibi checks. He's removed from the suspect list, leaving investigators with the worst feeling in policing. You've eliminated someone, but you haven't found anyone. Then, 2 hours after Cynthia disappears, the case offers a clue that feels like a dark signature. At a nearby motel, a security guard doing rounds finds clothing dumped in a pile outside a room, and beneath it, a purse. Inside are credit cards, money, and Cynthia's Colorado driver's license. It's a jolt. If her purse and clothes are here, she was here, or someone made it look that way. The motel has no record of her checking in, and the clothing matches what she was last seen wearing. But something is missing: her bra and underwear. The detectives don't need a speech from a psychologist to understand what that implies. Missing intimate clothing suggests sexual involvement, coercion, or a trophy taken by someone who wanted to keep part of the moment. In investigations like this, that detail is never comforting. It doesn't scream runaway. It whispers predator. Weeks drag on with little progress. Searches turn up nothing. Leads go nowhere. As time passes, the fear becomes heavier because the longer someone is missing under these circumstances, the less likely the ending is a happy one. And then, 42 days after Cynthia vanished, a teenager jogging through Fairview Cemetery notices something that doesn't belong. What begins as curiosity turns into horror as he realizes he's looking at a body. The cold weather preserves Cynthia's remains in a way that makes the scene even more devastating. She is naked except for shoes and socks. There is clear evidence of sexual assault. There is extreme knife violence. She has been stabbed 25 times. And there is one detail that unsettles even experienced investigators. Her body has been positioned in an unnatural way, as if the killer didn't just leave her, but arranged her, posed her, and stood back to look. This is not only violence, it's domination, it's display. It's a kind of cruelty that goes beyond removing life and enters the territory of treating a human being like an object. The detectives ask the practical question: was the cemetery the assault site or a dumping ground? They don't find drag marks or a trail suggesting she was moved far after death. The cemetery is quiet, remote, chosen specifically because it is the kind of place where someone can do something horrible and believe they will not be interrupted. A witness mentions seeing a dark-colored pickup leaving the cemetery area weeks earlier, and detectives chase that lead. They identify a man named Richie Hayden who lives nearby and has a story. He liked the view, he was just there for the scenery. At the time, they can't tie him to Cynthia. The case goes cold. And for the family, cold case is not a category, it's a sentence. It means you wake up and go to sleep without answers, year after year. 3 years later, a shift happens, not in the case itself, but in the department. Sergeant Joe Kenda returns to Homicide as a supervisor, and like any good leader, he reviews what's still open. He brings the detectives together, pushes for cohesion, and asks them what case they would most want to solve if they could. One name surfaces quickly: Cynthia McLaughlin. The team knows the emotional weight. They also know how rare it is for a case like this to stay unsolved. Kenda decides to reopen it, and they begin doing the hard, unglamorous work of retracing steps that other people walked years earlier. They start with old leads. Richie Hayden comes back onto the radar, and this time the background check looks different. Someone finds that he has a prior sexual assault conviction. Then another piece clicks. Back in 1982, he worked as a dishwasher at the very motel where Cynthia's clothing was found. Now the coincidence feels too neat to ignore. But policing can't run on coincidence. Kenda's team looks for a scientific way to eliminate or confirm him. Evidence from Cynthia's assault had established the perpetrator's blood type. Investigators check Hayden's blood type from records and find it does not match. It's not him. Another lead falls away, and again the frustration rises. So they widen the lens. They revisit Cynthia's close friend, Mary Denito. Mary, now older and carrying the weight of years, admits something she never said before. Cynthia had been seeing someone secretly, and nobody knew. Why? Because the man was married. His name is Steve Carlton, and he worked with Cynthia at her second job as a security guard. Mary didn't mention it earlier because Cynthia's mother was sitting right there, and everyone still hoped Cynthia might be alive. It's a painfully human detail. People keep secrets to protect feelings, and sometimes those secrets sit right on top of the truth. Now, Kenda's interest spikes. A married man having an affair has motive, fear, exposure, the threat of his wife finding out. Investigators contact Fort Carson and learn that Carlton is in the Army. They uncover troubling information. He tried to transfer out of the area shortly after Cynthia's murder. The request was denied. He's been under investigation for obscene phone calls to women on base, and there's suspicion that someone has been stealing underwear from women's locker rooms. Carlton fits a pattern that is ugly, but investigators still need to determine whether he fits this crime. They bring Carlton in for questioning. He admits the affair, but claims it ended weeks before Cynthia vanished. He denies the other allegations. He insists he cared for Cynthia and had no reason to hurt her. In the room, he appears believable, and again, the case refuses to hand over the clean, satisfying answer. Carlton doesn't stick as the killer. Another trail grows cold. At this point, Kenda makes a leap that changes everything. Instead of focusing solely on Cynthia's personal life, he studies the crime itself, the abduction from a parking lot, the sexual assault, the extreme knife violence, the posing of the body. This isn't just murder. It's a specific kind of violence with a ritual-like signature. Kenda argues that sexual predators often repeat. They don't commit a crime like this once and then become peaceful citizens. Their behavior escalates. Their method becomes part of them. And that leads to a terrifying but necessary question. What if Cynthia wasn't killed by someone she knew? What if she crossed paths with a rare kind of criminal, a transient predator, a tourist of violence, someone who drifted into Colorado Springs for a brief period, did what he did, and drifted out again? That possibility opens the investigation beyond city limits. The team sends out a broadcast to law enforcement agencies across the country describing the crime and asking for similar cases or similar offenders. For a while, nothing comes back. Then a response arrives from Florida that lands like a thunderclap. A man named James Lamar Rhodes. He has attacked multiple young girls with a knife, raped them, stabbed them, and in at least one case, the victim survived and identified him. The pattern sounds chillingly familiar. Even worse, better. From an investigative standpoint, records show Rhodes was living in Colorado Springs for about 60 days during the time frame of Cynthia's disappearance. Now the case has a target. Rhodes is already in Florida prison serving multiple life sentences for attempted murder. If Kenda's team can get him to talk, Cynthia's case might finally have an ending. The challenge is obvious. Predators like this don't confess out of empathy. They confess out of ego, attention, control, or a belief they can negotiate their way into a better situation. Kenda chooses a detective known for interrogation skill, someone who can build rapport even with the worst kind of person. The strategy is psychological. Talk to Rhodes about Rhodes. Get him comfortable. Let him brag. Let him feel important. It works. In conversation, Rhodes talks about drifting, about wanting to feel in control, about doing work that made him feel like a man. He hints that he has done terrible things, that he could write a book about it if he weren't afraid of severe punishment. And there it is, the narcissism, the desire to be seen, the hunger to have his story matter. The detective makes a deal that removes a major barrier. He tells Rhodes the death penalty will be taken off the table. That promise is enough to pull Rhodes closer to the edge of confession. But Rhodes doesn't just want to tell, he wants to show. He wants the thrill of replaying his own power. So he agrees to be transported back to Colorado to walk them through it. What follows is the kind of scene that makes seasoned investigators feel sick. A guided tour of murder. Rhodes points to the parking lot. He describes seeing Cynthia leaving work. He claims he didn't know her, that he simply chose her because she was there scraping ice off her windshield. He describes approaching, forcing her into his car, and driving to the cemetery. He recounts threatening her with a knife, assaulting her, and then stabbing her repeatedly, so many times that even he can't explain why the number was so high. The detectives already know the number, 25. Hearing him say it out loud doesn't just confirm facts, it confirms the identity of the kind of person they are dealing with. He explains how he dumped her clothing and purse near the motel because he needed to get rid of evidence quickly. When asked about the missing bra and underwear, he claims he doesn't remember. Investigators don't believe that. They suspect he remembers perfectly and simply doesn't want to reveal the trophy element, but the broader confession is enough. Rhodes is convicted in Colorado of first-degree murder and sentenced to life. Florida keeps him first to serve his multiple life terms there, and if he ever outlives those, Colorado is waiting with another life sentence. He is suspected of additional victims, though not all cases can be proven. For Cynthia's family, the solution is a cruel kind of closure. They have the name of the man who did it, but they don't have Cynthia back. Stacy grows up without her mother. Cynthia's mother and sister carry the grief for decades, and even when the case is solved, the absence remains permanent. What changes is the unanswered question that haunted them. Who? Now they know. Cynthia wasn't betrayed by someone she trusted. She was unlucky enough to breathe the same air as a rare predator passing through town, a man who treated human beings like disposable objects and turned violence into a traveling habit. And in the end, that's what makes this story land so hard. The first assumption, someone she knew, was reasonable, because that's how most cases go. But this case was different. It was the kind of case that teaches investigators humility, because it reminds them the world contains people who don't need a reason, people who don't need a relationship, people who don't need a personal grudge. Sometimes the most dangerous criminals are the ones who choose a victim the way a storm chooses a street, randomly, ruthlessly, and without warning.